This whole thing kicks off with a bad news wizard named Oto Shigeki. Dude's on a train, cops are after him, and instead of going quietly, he starts throwing fire magic everywhere, taking out a bunch of officers. He climbs up to the roof of the train, spots a police chopper, and straight up takes it down, wrecking part of the train and some government property in the process. Two detectives, Shizumu and Quinn, are hot on his trail, even though they're just regular humans. Quinn, who's a badass female cop, tricks Shigeki into slipping up. A couple of bullets to his leg later, he's down for the count, arrested, cuffed, and rushed to trial. At the magic court, the judge doesn't waste any time. He lists Shigeki's crimes and slams down the gavel, sentencing him to death on the spot. As soon as the sentence is given, some crazy energy field surrounds Shigeki, and poof, he's dust. His lawyers storm out of the courtroom, pissed that all their hard work to get him a life sentence went nowhere. Outside, they run into the two detectives who caught their now dead client. Their boss, Ajeha, exchanges a few words but keeps it together. Meanwhile, across town, there's this 17-year-old girl named Cecil who's straight up failing at life that morning. Her pet's trying to wake her up, but she's out cold. When she finally wakes up, she freaks out because she's late for her first day at work. She scrambles to get ready, bolts out the door, and takes a shortcut she's not supposed to. Of course, she gets stopped by the cops and slapped with a ticket. When they realize she's a witch, they try to search her, but she knows her rights and shuts that nonsense down. After the cops leave, she spots this massive magical robot causing chaos in the city and decides to chase after it. Her pet, Nanaji, thinks she's nuts but keeps quiet because, well, he likes being spoiled. Over at Ageha's company, the employees are waiting for the new recruits to show up. Everyone's hyped to meet Cecil because she crushed it in law school at such a young age. Ageha shows up and introduces another recruit, Hotaru Natsuna, first. The employees are surprised because they expected Cecil to be there already, but Ageha lets them know she's running late. Meanwhile, Ageha heads to a crime scene in the city, where she meets up with detectives Quinn and Shizumu. Even though she's new to the scene, she offers to represent the main suspect, a guy named Kohinata. Back at the office, the employees are gossiping about Cecil being late. Sasori, one of them, thinks she's got guts, while Hotaru is clearly pissed about the whole situation. Then, Ageha gets a call from the cops, who tell her that Cecil is already representing one of their suspects. When Cecil finally shows up at work, she apologizes, but this dude Sasori totally tears into her. Some of the employees think her outfit is a little much, but Sasori thinks it's cute. Earlier that day, the magical robot had attacked a bank, and the robbers inside made off with a ton of cash. One customer, Kohinata, fought back and killed one of the robbers with magic. Now, Cecil explains all this to Ageha and says Kohinata got arrested for it. Sasori doesn't think Cecil should handle the case, but Ageha overrules him and gives Cecil the go-ahead. Hotaru's not thrilled about the decision either. That evening, Sasori tags along with Cecil to the police station to meet their client, Kohinata. The guy doesn't say much because he doesn't think anyone can help him. On the way back, Sasori tries to cheer Cecil up, but also tells her she needs to dress more professionally if she wants to impress the judge. Back at the office, Hotaru heads out, and Cecil waves goodbye. Cecil then chats with a co-worker, Moyo, about how her first day went and her earlier interview with Kohinata. While she's doing her thing, another co-worker, Hachi, butts in and asks why she decided to take on Kohinata's case. Cecil answers like a total newbie, but Hachi cuts her off, saying she's way off base if she thinks her job is about saving people. He's got this super intense, gloomy vibe going on. As he walks off, Cecil sticks to her goal of saving her first client from the death penalty. On her way home, some lawyers from rival firms are low-key stalking her from a distance. Once she gets home, Cecil crashes on the couch and gets a massage. The next day, Quinn and Shizumu share their findings about the bank robbery with their bosses. They're convinced Kohinata is a suspect because he's been hanging around the bank every day, even though he got fired a while back. Word about this gets to Ajeha fast, and she fills in her team. With this info, Cecil and Sasori go to interview Endo, a key witness, to figure out what went down at the bank. But Endo's lawyer makes things super difficult, and the meeting ends without much progress. On the way back to work, Sasori gets a call from Endo and sets up another meeting. Later that evening, Cecil meets up with Sasori at Endo's place to dig deeper into the case. Endo spills that Kohinata used his magic to save her from the robbers. Because of that, the robbers attacked Endo, and she ended up killing one of them in self-defense. After the chat, the two lawyers head straight to the police station to see their client. This time, Kohinata opens up to Cecil, and she figures out that he and Endo are in a relationship. That explains why he kept going to the bank even after losing his job. The next day, Cecil skips work and heads to an offshore prison to visit her mom, who's still waiting on her sentence. That night, she stays late at the office grinding away on her computer. Out of nowhere, Moyo sneaks up on her and drags her out for a food break. Moyo's taken a liking to Cecil, even though though they've just met. While they're eating, Moyo gets curious and asks why Cecil was late for work. Cecil finally opens up about her mom's case but tells Moyo to keep it on the down low. Later, some thugs jump Moyo and Cecil uses her magic to save her. She pulls all the nearby metal together and creates this massive robot out of it. The sight of the robot freaks the thugs out so much that they take off running. Turns out, they were sent by some mystery person trying to test Cecil's powers. The annoying part? The cops show up, red and blue lights flashing, and arrest Cecil for using magic. The next day, Cesare is hot on Cecil's heels, totally ticked off because Cecil's actions lost their firm a ton of cash. While Cecil's running like her life depends on it, Cesare yells that she's docking a big chunk from her paycheck. And Moyo's too. Cecil tries to defend herself, saying she thought Article 10 of the Magic Prohibition Law had her back. After the chase, Moyo takes Cecil to grab some breakfast at a restaurant. Over the meal, Moyo can't help but hype Cecil up for her killer magic skills the night before, even though it caused a bit of a mess. Cecil gets all flustered and admits she's pretty useless without some metal nearby. Later that morning, Cecil's at the Butterfly Legal Office, Ajeha's firm, brainstorming with her co-workers about how to help Kohinata out of his mess. She comes up with an idea to catch one of the gang members who robbed the bank and get him to clear Kohinata's name. Cesare's totally against it, but Ajeha decides to call in the cops for backup. Unfortunately, Quinn shuts them down when Ajeha tries to talk to her. During lunch, Ajeha tells Cecil the cops have hit a wall with Kohinata's case. She figures it's because Quinn seemed super stressed when she stopped by earlier. Cecil's shocked but snaps out of it when she gets all the paperwork for Kohinata's preliminary hearing. The next day, everyone involved shows up in court for Kohinata's hearing with Judge Fango. The prosecution is pushing for the death penalty, but Cecil steps in. At first, the judge is skeptical about her, but he lets her speak. Cecil lays out her argument, and it's solid enough that the judge agrees to check out her evidence. On their way out, Sasori warns Cecil they're still in a tough spot since they're using self-defense as their strategy. Back at the office, the team leans on their tech expert to whip up a model of the bank robber's magic robot. Cecil and the crew study the image, wondering what kind of metal the robbers used to build the bot. Meanwhile, Hotaru picks a fight with Cecil, calling her out for being inexperienced. Sasori steps in to shut Hotaru down before she can hurt Cecil's feelings, but it's too late. Cecil's already feeling down. Later that night, she's soaking in her bathtub, lost in her thoughts, when the smell of something delicious pulls her out of her funk. Turns out, Nanaji's cooking up a storm in the kitchen, and Cecil can't wait to dig in. Meanwhile, Ajeha reaches out to someone outside the firm to make sure Cecil has a shot at winning her first case. The next day, Ajeha shows up at the office and drags Cecil out before she can head to court. On the way, Ajeha spills the tea. She found the robber's hideout by disguising herself as Quinn and using illusion magic to get the info. Cecil freaks out when he realizes Ajeha can use magic like that. When they sneak into the hideout, their cover gets blown pretty quickly. While they're stuck, Kohinata's trial kicks off in the high court, with Sasori being the only one there to represent him since Cecil and Ajeha are MIA. Back at the hideout, Ajeha teases Cecil about her dream of being a lawyer and reveals she's known about Cecil's mom all along. Cecil's laser focused on escaping so she can make it to court in time. Ajeha gets cocky and uses a blade to cut herself free, then calls the firm to report what's going down. Meanwhile, Cecil taps into her powers and summons a giant robot to take on the robbers. Turns out, the robbers are part of a gang called No Face. They team up and create a giant robot of their own to go head-to-head with Cecil. Ageha's thrilled because the fight doubles as evidence for the trial, but things get dicey when the robbers land a brutal hit on Cecil. Ageha slips off Cecil's robot, but Cecil grabs her just in time before she hits the ground. The fight keeps going until Cecil chucks the enemy robot into the river, but then Ageha gets snatched by the bad guys. Luckily, Cesare shows up with Hotaru and another co-worker to rescue her. After that, Cecil's crew teams up to take down their enemies one by one. Meanwhile, back in the city, Endo is in court trying to defend her testimony about Kohinata, but the prosecution is working hard to tear her down. Despite her efforts, the judge ends up sentencing Kohinata to death. Just as Judge Fango is about to slam his gavel, Cecil bursts into the courtroom with a member of the No Face organization, who's ready to testify. At first, the opposition isn't having it, but the judge rethinks it and allows the testimony. The No Face guy bluntly says Kohinata isn't part of their criminal crew. When it's time for the verdict, Judge Fango declares Kohinata not guilty. Cecil's team is stoked, while the opposition is clearly ticked off. Even the Supreme Court Chief Justice, Makusu Shimon, gives Cecil props before heading out, which totally freaks her out as she tries to process what just happened. The next day, Ajeha runs into her old friend Quinn, who's super mad at her for stealing her identity to dig up info for her case. Surprisingly, Quinn cools down and agrees not to bust Ajeha for it. Ajeha grins and heads back to her firm, where she officially welcomes Hotaru and Cecil to the team. Cecil's in a good mood too, since Kohinata had thanked her earlier for saving his life. But then Hachi casually drops a comment that Kohinata might not be totally innocent, leaving Cecil and the rest of the crew stunned as they try to make sense of it. The next morning, Cecil wakes up and finds out she's been slapped with a fine for taking a restricted route. Back in the day, when Hachi was still working as a federal prosecutor, he handled a case where he pushed for the death penalty against a guy named Namase Masato, a stuntman accused of killing someone with magic during a performance. That case still haunts Hachi, even showing up in his dreams. One evening, a witch named Saotomi Mayu went after Namase's manager, seeking revenge for something he'd done in the past. The next day, two lawyers from the Shark Knight Law Office, Kiba and Shibiki, approached Cecil at a water park, trying to convince her to join their firm. They saw her as a major asset, especially after how well she handled her last case. But Cecil turned them down, even though they offered a sweet salary and perks. Before leaving, Kiba and Shibiki threw some shade at Ageha's firm, claiming it had a bad reputation. When Sasori heard about this, she got annoyed because she secretly wanted a chance with Kiba, or Shibiki, since they're both good looking. Later that afternoon, Hachi got to work and found out Quinn needed him at the station. When he got there, he saw Mayu and recognized her right away. Earlier that day, Quinn had been reviewing Mayu's criminal file and found out she'd used her powers to kill Namase's manager. Shizumu joined the investigation and learned that Mayu wanted Hachi to represent her in court. In the present, Hachi got curious and asked Mayu why she caused a recent explosion. Her answer was pretty odd. She said she just needed to blow off some steam, but she didn't hold back for bringing up Namase's case from 2 years ago. Back then, the judge accused Namase of meeting with his manager and convincing him to use his powers during a stunt. Someone ended up dying, but Namase denied it all, claiming it was actually his manager who told him to use his powers. Mayu, who was there at the time, got really mad, especially because the manager was smiling through it all. Things escalated when Namase, fed up with the judge, broke out of his cuffs, activated his magic, and put everyone in danger. Mayu, who loved him the most, tried to stop him but couldn't. In the end, Namase was killed, and the case was closed. Now, in the present, Hachi realizes he screwed up big time as a prosecutor back then. His meeting with Mayu ended soon after, and he went straight to Ajeha to say Mayu might have other motives. He also asked to handle her case himself. Word spread fast around the company, and Cecil found out Hachi used to be a federal prosecutor. She also learned that he'd awakened his powers in the past, which got him removed from his position. The gossip about Hachi stopped when Ageha showed up and asked to talk to Cecil. As Cecil left, Hotaru looked jealous because Cecil was getting all the attention. Later, Hotaru joined Moyo at a restaurant, venting about how frustrated she was with the whole Cecil situation. She felt like all the work was going to Cecil, and she didn't want to be left behind. Moyo promised to keep Hotaru's feelings to herself and reassured her that she'd be an amazing lawyer one day. That afternoon, Mayu's sitting in jail, thinking back on what went down before her boyfriend got busted. Back then, Namase told her that his boss was threatening to can him if he didn't use his powers for stunts. Mayu wasn't feeling it, but Namase sweet-talked her, saying the extra cash would be worth it, and she eventually gave in. Fast forward to now, Mayu's in front of Quinn and Shizumu, trying to defend herself as new evidence pops up in her case. Shizumu thinks she killed her boyfriend's boss out of revenge. When they press her about it, Mayu just clams up, looking super sketchy. Quinn storms out of the interrogation room, ticked off, and bumps into Hachi and Cecil on the way. Before taking off, Quinn throws some shade, saying Mayu's bad news since she willingly went through with her last kill. Later, Hachi and Cecil sit down with Mayu for another round of questioning. Cecil tries to get to the bottom of Mayu's motives, but Mayu plays dumb and brushes it off, claiming her meeting with Namase's boss was just a coincidence. After the session, Hachi leaves, racking his brain on how to lighten Mayu's sentence. That night, the next day, Hachi and Cecil show up at court to represent Mayu. Before things kick off, Hachi tells Cecil to let him take the lead in the courtroom. The trial starts, and the prosecution hits the judge with hard evidence, making it look like Mayu was out to kill Namase's boss. Cecil steps up to defend Mayu, and the way she argues catches the attention of Shibuki and Kiba, who are watching. At one point, the prosecutors push for the death penalty penalty, but Hachi fires back with some solid arguments, and the judge ends up going with life in prison instead. Even though things seem to be working out, Mayu's fuming. She's pissed that her boyfriend got the death penalty for something he didn't do, while she's stuck with life for actually committing a crime. She snaps and starts ranting, confessing in detail how she killed Namase's boss. Then, out of nowhere, Hachi uses his powers to set her free, saying he owes her because he was one of the prosecutors who went after her boyfriend. But it all spirals out of control when Mayu flips out, activating her powers and going after all the lawyers in the courtroom. She even turns on Hachi, hitting him with some serious pain. Cecil's there and asks the now freaked out judge for permission to use her powers to stop Mayu. The judge gives the green light, but Hachi tells her to back off. Cecil tries to talk Mayu down, but it's no use. Mayu gets even angrier and blasts Cecil with an energy beam, then wounds Hachi and gets ready to finish him off. In a split second, Cecil recovers, powers up, and fights back against Mayu. Mayu's stunned, but manages to say that she needs to figure out the truth behind Namase's death. She believes it was all a setup, but before she can finish, Shizumu shoots her in the heart. As Mayu's life slips away, she whispers something to Hachi about a Grimoire 365. The next day, word gets out that Hachi's under house arrest for a week. Ageha and her crew gossip about it, but they're also buzzing about Cecil's new powers. Meanwhile, a secret meeting goes down with some unidentified men. They're talking about Grimoire 365, and how a certain group of wizards could be a threat to them. Turns out, Namase and Mayu were targeted because of this. Cecil's name comes up too, and they're shocked that she's unlocked some new abilities. After a few days, this shady wizard dude named Shimizu Tsukuji goes head-to-head with Quinn and Shizumu's crew in a subway station. While the guy's goofing off and riding the chaos like it's a wave, Shizumu sets a trap, and boom, he walks right into it. Meanwhile, Hotaru shows up early to work that morning to get the lowdown on what's popping in the city. There, this old-timer named Kamakiri hangs around and forces her to listen to updates about Shimizu's case. Sasori's all hyped because with Shimizu caught by the cops, she can flirt with as many dudes as she wants without some creepy surfer dude stalking her. Cecil, on the other hand, is over it. She's sick of Sasori's endless guy talk since, well, Sasori's way too into dudes. Cecil sits at her desk, wondering why Shimizu's got it out for witches and wizards specifically. When she asks, Kamakiri starts rambling about some old wizard beef over a book called Grimoire 365, but he's got zero answers when she presses him on how it's tied to Shimizu. Then a client rolls into the office and immediately catches Sasori's attention. Turns out, he's Shimizu's twin brother and goes by Sai. He's there to ask Ajeha's firm to take on Shimizu's case and represent him in court. Later that day, Ajeha heads to the police station with Cecil and Sasori to meet their new client. On the way, Cecil's super unsure about taking the case because, you know, Shimizu's a murderer, but Ageha reminds her it's their job to protect wizards' rights under the law. When they meet Shimizu, Cecil starts questioning him, and not gonna lie, the guy's a total creep. He doesn't hold back, spilling the tea on how he offed his first victims, and then he pulls some weird stunt that makes Cecil super uncomfortable. The meeting ends, and Cecil's so freaked out she has to splash water on her face in the restroom to chill out. She's pissed she has to represent someone like Shimizu, but Ajeha bluntly tells her to either do her job or quit. That night, Cecil vents her frustration at home to her gross little green pet, but Nanaji doesn't care. He just thinks she's being dramatic. The next day, Ajeha tells Sasori she's putting Shimizu through a psych evaluation because he's got dissociative identity disorder, DID. That's when it clicks for Sasori. This guy might have multiple personalities sharing the same body. Meanwhile, Cecil's out by the ocean meeting her mom, who's in prison. Even though Cecil's trying to act like everything's fine, her mom can tell something's bothering her. Later that afternoon, Shimizu's twin brother thanks Ajeha for ordering the psych evaluation. He then opens up about their past, explaining how Shimizu was a victim of crappy parenting and neglect growing up. When their parents bailed, the brothers were sent to an orphanage, and that's where Shimizu's violent side and multiple personalities first showed up. Sai even says Shimizu doesn't recognize him anymore because of his condition. Ageha points out that DID causes memory gaps between the different personalities, which makes sense of Shimizu's situation. Before leaving, Sai asks if Moyo is around at the office. A little while later, Shimizu breaks loose from some security guards and takes them down one by one, leaving chaos in his wake. He grabs Ageha, holding a pen to her throat and threatening to kill her. But then, Ajeha says something that snaps Shimizu out of it, bringing him back to his senses. Confused, Shimizu looks around, wondering where he is, and even questioning his lawyers about who they are, leaving them stunned. Later, during lunch with the girls, Sasori mentions that the judge might go easy on Shimizu, since he has DID, dissociative identity disorder. Cecil isn't having it. She's furious because this guy has killed tons of people just for fun in the past. Haratu reminds her to focus on her client's best interest interests, no matter what. Soon after, Shimizu's trial kicks off, and the judge takes charge of the case. Judge Fango listens to all the arguments and ends up sentencing Shimizu to life in prison, but because of his DID, the judge throws in some health benefits for him to get treatment every now and then. Cecil is beyond mad about this decision, but keeps quiet when Shimizu's twin shows up to thank Ageha. Out of nowhere, Shimizu whispers something in Cecil's ear that makes her think he might be faking the whole DID thing. That night, Cecil chills in her bathtub, mulling over the case. Driven by curiosity, Cecil decides to leave her house and meet up with Shimizu's twin to see if her suspicions are right. At the same time, Sasori stays home, messing around with some cards to predict the future. Whatever she sees freaks her out, so she calls Ageha and Hachi to tell them Cecil might be in trouble. Later, Cecil sits down with Shimizu's twin, grilling him about his brother's supposed DID diagnosis. To her shock, the twin denies using the condition to get his brother's sentence reduced, but admits he's only after Cecil. This revelation stuns her, but she listens as he starts talking about her mom's case. Hearing him bring up her mom makes Cecil so angry that she tries to use her magic, but for some reason, her powers won't work. Just in time, Hachi and the others show up to save her. Moyo's sudden appearance throws the twin off, and he's left wondering who she is. Then, out of nowhere, the twin takes off, but comes back with a giant robot. Hachi jumps into action, trying to fight it, but he doesn't do much damage. That's when Cecil unlocks a new power and uses it to take down the robot. Quinn shows up and smiles as Ageha quotes Article 5 of the Constitution to keep everyone out of trouble. Later, Cecil is back at the office trying to figure out why the twins are targeting her. Somewhere else, Shimizu and his brother are sitting in cuffs in front of Detective Shizumu. Turns out, Shizumu was behind the attack on Cecil all along, but his reasons are still a mystery. One night, Shibuki and his co-workers hit up a bowling alley. One of them crushes it with an awesome score, while Shibuki can't even manage a decent one after 3 tries. Annoyed, he starts blaming the bowling balls, and the manager, Kiritani, tries to kick him out. Meanwhile, Kiba nails a perfect strike on his first try, but notices Shibuki arguing with the manager. Things get heated, and Shibuki ends up getting punched in the face. Kiba steps in to calm him down before he does something stupid. Later, the crew chills at a spot to grab some drinks. Shibuki downs his drink, storms out, and decides to get back at Kiritani for embarrassing him earlier. Not long after, Kiritani gets attacked in the restroom and stabbed to death by someone unknown. The next day, Kiba shows up at the Buttery legal office looking for help. At first, Cecil assumes he's trying to recruit her for his company, but she quickly realizes it's about Shibuki's case. While Kiba's explaining, Sasori cracks up, thinking Kiba's firm is going to owe them big time. Meanwhile, Hotaru's trying to figure out why Shark Knights, their biggest rivals, are asking for help. Sasori guesses it's because Cecil has a killer reputation, while Sasori is off daydreaming about hooking up with one of the Shark Knights. For Shibuki's case, Sasori suggests Kamakiri as Cecil's partner and assigns him to help out. Later that day, Cecil and Kamakiri meet Shibuki at the station to hear his side of the story. Shibuki admits he used his powers to humiliate Kiritani at the bowling alley as payback. He says when he got back to the restaurant to meet his friends, the cops were already there waiting for him since he looked guilty. He also believes Kiritani was killed right after he left the bowling alley that night. Cecil listens closely and points out that Shibuki doesn't have an alibi for when the murder happened. As for the murder weapon, Shibuki says he'd never bother using something like that. He'd just use his powers to make it look like suicide. Before leaving, he bows to his lawyers, begging them to prove his innocence before he's charged. As time goes on, Cecil and Kamakiri start questioning customers, staff, and bystanders who were at the bowling alley that night. Every interview makes Shibuki look worse, and they don't get any helpful info. Cecil starts losing patience with Kamakiri, thinking his slow, old-school methods are holding her back, especially since they're running out of time. That night, Makusu holds a secret meeting with his wizard cult and talks about something called Grimoire 365. So, turns out this dude's got Cecil on his mind and plans to use her to pull off his shady schemes. The next day, Kamakiri and Cecil roll up to the crime scene to scope out any fresh clues. While Cecil's all business, Kamakiri gets distracted by a supermodel magazine and zones out, totally checking out the goods. Big Bro snaps back to reality when his annoying stepsis hollers at him to ditch the R-rated stuff. Later that day, while grilling some locals for info, Kamakiri can't stop himself from dozing off, no matter how many times Cecil tries to shake him awake. That night, when the two lawyers meet up with Shibuki, he loses it on them. Dude's fuming because his indictment's coming in hot, and his lawyers have been slacking big time. Cecil, though, promises she'll give it her all, and after the meeting, she tells Kamakiri to step up his game. While they're talking, Shizumu shows up and drops a juicy hint that could help Shibuki dodge the death penalty. When they ask why he's spilling the tea, he says he just wants a fair fight. Later that evening, Kamakiri Kamakiri wanders off to dig through a trash spot for more clues. The next morning, Cecil finds out Shibuki's indictment is locked in. She's bummed when Kib asks what she's been up to the past few days. Frustrated, she goes to Cesare and asks him to take Kamakiri off her case. She's convinced Kamakiri's holding her back, but Cesare's not buying it. He points out Kamakiri's got mad experience and reminds her she can't handle this case solo. While Kamakiri's away, Hotaru shows up and gives Cecil a piece of her mind for wanting him off the case. She tells Cecil that Kamakiri's been busting his butt since day one, even putting up with her bad attitude. Cecil tunes Hotaru out after a while and later bumps into Kamakiri at the firm's entrance. He hands her the bowling center's shift schedule for the month and points out that one employee seems to always be working the same shifts as the manager. Kamakiri remembers another worker, Suzui, saying he didn't have much time to talk to the manager, which doesn't add up since they're on the same shifts. Plus, a co-worker mentioned seeing Suzui and the manager chatting occasionally. Kamakiri's got his suspicions, so he and Cecil head to the bowling center to question an employee about Suzui. They find out Suzui's taken some time off and might be planning to quit. That's enough to send them straight to Suzui's house for answers. When they get there, Suzui shuts down their accusations and sends them packing. On their way out, Kamakiri starts brainstorming a way to dig up solid evidence against Suzui. That night, Suzui drives out to the woods to ditch the murder weapon and a box. But when he gets out of the car, he spots the dead manager and freaks out. He starts spilling the beans, and when he feels like he's in danger, he grabs the murder weapon to defend himself. That's when Kamakiri pops out and reveals he can use illusion magic too. Cecil catches everything Suzui says on tape, locking in some solid evidence for Shibuki's case. The next day, Cecil lays it all out in court, and the prosecution drops their charges against Shibuki, but they press Kamakiri about whether magic was used to gather evidence, and the dude just straight up faints. Later, Kiba and Shibuki visit Cecil at the hospital to check on Kamakiri. Shibuki thanks Cecil for her hard work, and says he's looking forward to teaming up again in the future. At some point, Cecil gets curious and asks the two lawyers why they even want her at their firm. Right then, a call from Cesare comes in, and the lawyers use it as an excuse to dodge the question. Cecil's ticked that she's the only one stuck at the hospital watching over Kamakiri, but when she gets back to the office, she finds out Kamakiri's been faking it the whole time. Sasori spills the beans that Kamakiri always passes out in court when things get dicey. Meanwhile, Kamakiri's outside the hospital somewhere, showing off his dance moves. About a week later, Cecil's screw-ups with magic get worse, and Cesare is ticked off because the firm's taking the heat for it. Even Ajeha shows up with more fines, and Cecil finally grows a backbone to stand up for herself. This ticks Hotaru off, and she totally snaps at Cecil. Meanwhile, Kamakiri's chilling at his station, grinning at some juicy stuff in a magazine. Ageha wraps it up by telling Cecil to watch her back and follow the law when she's doing her thing. By sunset, Cecil's leaving the office looking all down in the dumps. She runs into her co-worker, Kabu, who invites her to hang out over the weekend. Apparently, Kabu overheard Sasori talking about how Cecil's been growing in certain areas, which leaves Cecil super flustered. Still, she takes a costume Kabu offers her before Kabu heads out. The next day, a criminal named Dente and his gang wreak havoc in the city, catching Quinn's attention. Cecil has a tough time getting to work because the roads are blocked. She stops when she spots Dente's crew rolling out of a giant robot to attack a school. Cecil jumps in to help but gets snagged by one of Dente's thugs. Quinn shows up with a rocket launcher, but Shizumu stops her from firing since innocent people could get hurt. Things get real when Dente's guys start pointing guns at kids, threatening to hurt them if the cops make a move. The news blows up with reports about Dente's gang locking down the elementary school. Moyo hears about it and starts freaking out, worried about Cecil. Back at the school, Quinn gets her kill squad ready to storm the place, but Shizumu's not having it, and the two start arguing. Meanwhile, Cecil's stuck thinking about her options and realizes she can't use magic to save the kids. Instead, she tries to talk to Dente and figure out what he's after. His answer? World domination. It's so childish that even the kids think he's lame, but Cecil starts noticing something weird about Dente and his crew. Elsewhere, Kabu is living her superhero fantasy, posing for the press. When she hears about the hostage situation, she rushes off with her pet to save the day. Back at the school, the kids are scared, but their teacher tries to keep them calm, saying the cops will save them. Cecil even shares her snacks with the kids to cheer them up. The kids spot her hero costume, and Dente's guys make her put it on. Nanaji can't stop staring at Cecil's exposed torso once she's in the skimpy outfit. Time drags on, and Quinn gets bored since Dente's crew hasn't demanded anything. She orders her team to plant cameras in the building, but Shizumu's still against it, worried the hostages might get hurt. Their argument gets cut short when Kabu shows up and sneaks into the school to save the day. She throws a few punches and takes down some of Dente's guys, but she celebrates too soon and gets gets grabbed from behind by one of them. In the end, Kabu gets captured and thrown in with Cecil. While they're stuck together, Cecil tells Kabu about how Dente's guys don't really seem like they want to hurt the kids. Kabu notices something's off too, but says she'll use magic to protect the kids if she has to. Pretty soon, Quinn's crew rolls into the building, and all hell breaks loose with bullets flying everywhere. One of the teachers gets caught in the crossfire and drops to the floor. Things hit a whole new level when Dente whips out his gun and fires straight at Cecil. Time literally freezes as the bullet gets ridiculously close to Cecil's head. Turns out, Moyo's powers kick in, and she uses them to mess with the bullet's path. Once she's done, time snaps back to normal, and Dente freaks out. Panicking like a total wimp, he bolts to his giant robot and grabs a kid as a hostage. Cecil's officially over his crap by now. She gets the green light from Shizumu to unleash her magic. Cecil powers up and summons a ton of metal from 5 blocks away. She builds a massive robot that absolutely wrecks Dente's robot and rescues the kid. Somewhere in the chaos, Dente bails from his robot and takes off in a stolen cop car. Shizumu speeds after him, with Quinn tailing behind in another car. Meanwhile, Kabu wraps up taking out the rest of Dente's crew. Elsewhere, Shizumu catches up to Dente and his guys. Turns out, Dente sent his crew after Cecil just to force her to use her magic powers. But then Dente gets cocky and demands a spot in Shizumu's secret cult. He even threatens to spill the beans about Shizumu being a wizard if he doesn't get what he wants. Shizumu's not having it, so he straight up shoots Dente and his guys, wiping them all out. He also deletes the comm device that could link him to Dente's mess. Quinn shows up right after, stunned to find Dente and his crew dead. When she asks what happened, Shizumu lies, saying they fought back during the arrest, so he had no choice but to shoot. Quinn takes his gun and starts thinking about her next move. Later, Sasori chews out Kabu and Cecil for using their magic, but he chills out when he finds out Shizumu filed a request to cover them from getting fined. In the end, the lawyers celebrate, but Hotaru's still salty about the whole thing. That night, Quinn meets a dude from the forensics department and learns something sketchy about Shizumu's run-in with Dente's crew. She's curious why none of Dente's guys managed to land a single shot on Shizumu, even though they were super close to him. The next day, Cecil shows up at the police station to personally thank Shizumu for helping her dodge those magic use fines. She even gives him a sacred gift, a protective stone from Archangel Michael, as a way to show her gratitude. But then she realizes she's running late for her flight and bolts to meet her co-workers at the airport. Luckily, she makes it to Narita Airport just in time to join Ageha and the rest of the crew. Moyo gets all emotional and starts tearing up because Cecil is heading to the US. For some reason, she asks the others to keep an eye on Cecil while she's overseas, then wishes her a safe trip. On the flight, Sasori asks Hotaru if she's a frequent traveler. Hotaru says yeah, she's been around Europe in a rental car and even has an international driver's license. Later that night, while everyone else is asleep, Cecil stays awake, thinking about the last time she visited her mom. Back then, she told her mom she was heading to Boston to check out the Helsing Law Office. She also mentioned maybe stopping to see her dad, but her mom told her it wasn't necessary. Now, Cecil's focused on finding new evidence to get her mom out of prison. After they land in the US, a rep from the Helsing Law Office named Diana picks up Ageha and the others. She drives them to the firm, but on the way, she gets a call from the cops about some guy named Gaia Grimm, who's wanted for murder and robbery. When they finally get to the office, the head honcho, Kint, welcomes them. Kint immediately notices Cecil, which makes Hotaru scowl. Later, Cecil and her team get a tour of the firm and even sit in on a session at the High Court. The next evening, the group is having dinner together when Diana offers to take Sasori and the others on a detour. Meanwhile, Sasori says Cecil can swing by Canada to see her dad, but Hotaru gets super annoyed when she finds out she's the one stuck driving Diana all the way to Canada. The next morning, Cecil hops in the car with Hotaru for the trip. Hotaru's in a mood and tells Cecil to stay quiet so she can focus on driving. When they stop at a gas station, Hotaru realizes her credit card isn't working. Cecil steps in with a solution, and Hotaru accepts, but she's still cranky when she gets back in the car. Even Nanaji comments on how rude Hotaru's being. Once the tank is full, they hit the road again, and Cecil tries to just roll with the awkward silence. At some point, the car breaks down, and Hotaru rudely tells Cecil to help out. While checking the car, Hotaru gets super annoyed because the Helsing firm sold her a car with bad maintenance. She takes out her frustration on Cecil and storms off, but eventually comes back to fix the engine. After some tinkering, they manage to get the car running again. Hotaru is totally wiped out, but still hops in the driver's seat to continue the trip to Canada with Cecil. After a bit of awkward silence, Hotaru starts chatting with Cecil, asking why she's living in Japan. Cecil explains that her mom wanted her to leave the US and go to school in Japan. Feeling comfortable, Cecil throws a personal question back at Hotaru. Surprisingly, Hotaru answers, but things get heated when that annoying frog, Nanji, tells Hotaru to step on the the gas. In the middle of the argument, Hotaru slams the brakes when she spots a girl standing alone in the road. Her name's Kaede, and it turns out she's also heading to Canada. After Cecil begs endlessly, Hotaru finally lets Kaede join the ride. Things get interesting when Kaede says she's studying in Canada to become a wizard barrister. They eventually stop somewhere and start talking about how unfair the legal system is toward witches and wizards. Kaede says she wants minorities to be treated fairly, while Cecil talks about ending discrimination against magical folks. As the trip goes on, the group starts chatting about TV shows they've watched. While they're chatting, Cecil drops a bombshell that shocks Hotaru. She's been studying for the bar exam since she was 13. Later, when they stop at a mall for supplies, Hotaru brings it up again, asking why Cecil studied for so long. Cecil dodges the question by pretending to focus on grabbing onions. That night, Nanji whips up an amazing meal with the stuff Hotaru bought, and the girls can't stop praising his cooking skills. Out of nowhere, Hotaru starts crying as she talks about a guy she has a huge crush on. Apparently, he's married, but she still leaves work early just to attend his lectures. She doesn't care if he never notices her, just seeing him makes her happy. Kaede opens up about her family too, especially her dad, who's in Japan. Cecil talks about her mom and reveals that she needs to save her. Early the next morning, Hotaru is still awake, thinking about what Cecil said the night before. Cecil had shared that her mom is on death row for protecting her from an attacker. Even though it was clearly self-defense, the police and judge wouldn't listen because of their bias against wizards. Cecil's dream is to become a great lawyer so she can save her mom from the death penalty. Back in the present, the group makes it to Canada and stops at a restaurant. Just as they're about to order, a wanted criminal named Gaia Grimm shows up and tries to rob them. Hotaru uses her magic to fight back, but then Kuba and Shibuki show up out of nowhere and save the day. When someone asks what they're doing in Canada, Kiba says he's there on a work trip to make some international connections. Cecil thanks Hotaru for stepping up against Gaia Grimm, but Kabu reminds her that using magic is illegal both in and outside Japan. However, he adds that Article 10 of the Constitution has Hotaru's back. Later, Hotaru drops Kaede off somewhere in Canada and then joins Cecil to say goodbye. As Kaede walks away, Nanaji comments that he senses some dangerous vibes coming off her. Meanwhile, Diana takes Cesare and the crew on a detour in Boston. Cesare checks the news at one point and finds out about Hotaru's run-in with Gaia Grimm. He freaks out at first, but chills when he realizes it's not a big deal. Later, Hotaru arrives at Cecil's dad's house, wrapping up their trip. When she gets out of the car, a guy points a gun at her head. It turns out to be Cecil's dad, David. Cecil runs to give her dad a big hug, while Hotaru freezes up. After a while, David hosts everyone and serves them tea. When asked about the gun, he says his fortune-telling cards warned him about unwanted visitors. Cecil just smiles, knowing her dad's predictions are always spot on. Cecil heads to the mall to grab some syrup for her dad, and while she's gone, Hotaru looks around the house and finds out David is a photographer. David opens up about his daughter, saying people were scared of her powers and used to bully her because she's half Japanese. He adds that he raised Cecil with love to help her stay cheerful. This prompts Hotaru to ask about Cecil's mom. David explains that he wanted to go to Japan, but Cecil's mom, Megumi, told him to stay and focus on his work. He also asks Hotaru to look out for Cecil, since she's the first friend his daughter has brought home in ages. Hotaru gets curious and asks what happened to Megumi. But before David can answer, Cecil walks in with Nanaji, and the conversation gets cut off. Nanaji takes over in the kitchen while Cecil shows Hotaru some childhood photos in her room. One picture catches Hotaru's eye. It's of a guy. Cecil casually mentions he was her first love. Even though she misses him, she's pretty sure they won't cross paths again anytime soon. Later, Hotaru works up the nerve to ask Cecil about her mom's case. Cecil says she doesn't remember much about what happened. She explains that her memory loss even affected her mom's trial since she couldn't recall what went down at the crime scene. All she knows is that her mom killed someone while trying to protect her. Once Nanaji finishes cooking, everyone sits down to eat. During lunch, Hotaru brings up Cecil's ability to activate different magical powers back in Japan, and Mr. David listens in. David's looking pretty ticked off. Over in Boston, Diana leads the crew to this rundown restaurant, and Cesare's gang tails her, right as Sasori makes some snarky comment about how dead the place is. Then, out of nowhere, Diana busts out her fire magic and goes after them. Luckily, Hachi's quick on his feet and steps in to block the flames before anyone gets roasted. Meanwhile, up in Canada, Cecil and Hotaru hop on this old-school boat for a chill time. While they're hanging out, Hotaru offers to help Cecil with her mom's case, which totally catches Cecil off guard. She wasn't expecting any backup from her. Their convo gets interrupted when the water starts acting all weird, and out of nowhere, this massive robot pops up and attacks them. One big wave from the robot sends both Cecil and Hotaru flying out of the boat. When Cecil finally comes to, she remembers her dad's fortune-telling and starts piecing things together. Cecil teams up with Hotaru, and they start firing off long-range attacks at the robot, but they're barely scratching it. Back in Boston, Diana's trying to take Hachi's team out of the picture so they won't mess with her plans. Hachi starts to figure out that Diana's somehow connected to Mayu, but he can't quite put the puzzle together yet. He switches to offense to protect his crew from Diana's flames. He manages to hold his ground for a bit, but he's running out of steam since no one's really backing him up. Even so, he bounces back and lands a serious hit on Diana, but it's not enough to take her down. When the smoke clears, Diana drops a bombshell. She set up Cecil's trip to Canada so she'd be out of her way. That's when it clicks for Hachi. Cecil's in serious danger right now. Over at David's place, Hotaru's lying on the ground, totally wiped out after getting wrecked by the giant robot. Cecil sees this and tries to fire up her magic, but her dad suddenly shows up and tells her to stop. Right then, a flaming projectile crashes into Cecil's childhood home, blowing the place up. Furious, Cecil ignores her dad's warning, powers up her magic, and pulls metal from blocks away to build her own giant robot. The fight kicks off, and Cecil doesn't hold back. She dodges the enemy's attacks like a pro and throws down some brutal hits. She completely wrecks the robot and rips open the cockpit to see who's behind the controls. Turns out, it's Kaede, the same girl Cecil helped out just the day before. Hotaru's floored, trying to figure out why Kaede would do something like this. When they ask her, Kaede spills that Cecil prosecuted her dad, who's tied to the no-face criminal organization. Kaede tries to guilt-trip Cecil, making her feel bad for going after her dad. It almost works, but then Kaede lets slip that some guy promised to shorten her dad's sentence if she could force Cecil to unleash her hidden magic. Hotaru brings up that this might connect to Megumi's trial, so Cecil presses Kaede for answers about who's behind it all. At the same time, Diana starts to talk about the person pulling the strings, but suddenly disintegrates into dust, along with Kaede, before she can spill the truth. Looks like Moyo might be involved since she suspiciously teleports back to her job in Canada, totally unaware that Kuba and Shibuki were spying on her from the woods. Over in Japan, Shizumu meets up with Makusu to report on Diana and Kaede. Makusu's not thrilled with how things are going and tells Shizumu to pick up the pace because they're running out of time. He smirks when Cecil comes up. He's got plans to use her power to achieve his ultimate goal. The next day, Cecil lands in Japan and goes straight to see her mom. She hands Megumi a half-burnt family photo, feeling guilty that she couldn't protect their home. Megumi comforts her and smiles at the magical flowers blooming from the picture. 6 years ago, Megumi stood in court to defend herself against accusations that she deliberately killed a police inspector. Back then, she said Inspector Aiba accidentally shot her daughter while chasing down some criminals. When she tried to take her daughter Cecil to the hospital, Aiba stopped her and tried to kill her because he didn't want to lose his job as a cop. The prosecutor called Megumi's story a lie, saying she had no proof. He even claimed Megumi attacked the cop out of revenge for her injured daughter. Cecil was crushed, and even Megumi's lawyer couldn't defend her. In the end, Megumi was sentenced to death, and Cecil cried her heart out. Now, Cecil thinks about the last thing Kaede told her before passing away. She wonders how it all connects to her mom's unfair trial 6 years ago, but her thoughts are interrupted when her mom shows up in the visitor's room. Cecil wastes no time and asks Megumi if she noticed anything suspicious about her trial. The way Cecil asks makes Megumi feel like something's up. When Megumi tries to press her, Cecil brushes it off with a nervous laugh. Meanwhile, Shizumu is sitting at the police station, staring at some jewelry Cecil gave him a while back. Elsewhere, Ageha and her team are in a meeting talking about what went down in Boston. Turns out, Saseri did some digging on Diana and found out she'd been using a dead person's identity. Cecil shows up late to the meeting, and Saseri snaps at her for it, but surprisingly, Hotaru steps in and tells him to chill. This shocks everyone since they never expected Hotaru to defend Cecil. Soon after, Moyo comes into the room and gets everyone's attention by showing a press conference hosted by Makusu. The conference is about a case involving a wizard who pretended to be human and worked as a secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now, the wizard is being sued. During the conference, Makusu tells the public that humans should treat wizards better, arguing that wizards have been unfairly treated for too long. His speech catches people off guard because no one expected him to take the wizard's side. Watching this on TV, Quinn gets mad at Makusu's comments. Shizumu notices this and gets frustrated too, but calms himself down so Quinn won't suspect anything. Later that day, Cecil sneaks out of the office, claiming she's following up on a case. At the same time, Ageha has a private talk with Hotaru about what went down in Canada. After a few minutes, Ageha realizes Hotaru knows about Megumi's situation. Hotaru says she's going to help Cecil with the case, not out of pity, but because she wants to. Meanwhile, Cecil heads to the Yabe law office to meet a lawyer, but when the receptionist tells her the lawyer isn't available, she leaves. It's clear Cecil is investigating her mom's case, and she's trying to track down the people involved in the trial. Next, she visits Shindaiji, the judge who presided over her mom's trial. When Shindaiji realizes who she is, he gets rude and refuses to answer her questions. Cecil hits a nerve when she accuses him of being biased during the trial. This makes Shindaiji end the meeting and kick her out of his office. Cecil's chilling in a field, trying to figure out her next move, when her pet gives her a pep talk. That's when she decides to meet up with Shizumu at the park. Shizumu's like, "Hey, let's hit the river," and she's down for it. While they're cruising along, Cecil spills the tea about digging back into her mom's case. Shizumu listens closely, giving her solid answers, and when he offers to help out, Cecil's hyped. Things take a turn though, when their boat smacks into another, and Cecil ends up falling on top of Shizumu. She scrambles up, totally flustered and blushing hard since she's never been that close to a guy before. Later that night, she heads back to work and finds Ageha waiting, clearly ticked off. Ageha calls her out for lying about using Moyo's name and poking around in her mom's case without permission. Ageha reminds her they're all like family at the firm and that everyone's got her back if she needs them. Meanwhile, Hotaru's lurking, keeping tabs on everything they're saying in private. That same evening, Bakusu's grinning like a creep while one of his cult members sacrifices an eye for some ritual. Shizumu's totally freaked out but worried his dad's going way overboard trying to summon the demon, Lucifer. Later, Shizumu's fuming because Makusu wants to use Cecil as part of the ritual. After mulling it over, he decides to go along with his dad's plan, for the sake of their cult, Makal.